June or two. So we'll probably just have one in the spring from now on and do 3 in the fall. Try to get it that way. We've got some decent weather today, so I'm sure that's affecting it as well. But we're really happy to have Brian Madigan here. He's with Gymo. He's a landscape architect and land use planner for them. And he's got over 30 years of experience in providing technical assistance to consulting engineers and landscape architects in central New York. He worked in Oswego County a long time ago. I was actually there at the same time, back in '99. So he's been in the private sector and the public sector. He still looks younger than I do. I can't figure that out. So maybe it's because I've been in Jefferson County for so long. So again, we're glad to have Brian here. I think you can ask questions during the session. Okay. And we don't have a lot of people, so feel free to ask whatever you like about planning and transportation. Thanks for coming. Take it away, Brian.
Okay, do you guys think I need a microphone?
No.
Not a big microphone guy. I just want to think I need it. What I'd like to talk tonight about is just a little bit of an overview of some of the things that affect highway corridors. I'm a little focused a little bit more on commercial highway corridors. But I'd like to talk about highway function. That's the functional classification of the highway system. I want to talk about some of the recent planning trends that are now starting to progress on in years, but some of the trends with dealing with transportation corridors, some of the potential impacts about decisions you might make when you're doing a site plan or a subdivision project, and planning approaches to, I guess, ameliorate or mitigate some of those effects. So, before I start, I just want to kind of mention the comprehensive plan. A lot of people have done one in their communities, and I want to focus on 2 of the aspects of what would normally be in a comprehensive plan, that's transportation and land use. Now, a lot of times when people talk to me about a comprehensive plan or they want to do one, they focus on economic development. And my answer to that is usually that all of those items are economic development. They all interrelate. That's one of the things I like about comprehensive plans is they're so complex and there's so many different aspects that feed into the final document. It's really a policy document in the end. And there may be some design guidelines and things included, but it's a pretty interesting process to go through. So transportation and land use, this is an example I'll show a little bit later about what can happen when one decision is really good and it's followed by a decision that's not so good. So I'll return to this later. To start off with highway function, the street system has a hierarchy, and it basically goes from local roads, which are very pedestrian oriented, to arterial highways like 81, where you have to be careful if you want pedestrians in the margin. It's high speed, high volume. So, the highway function is to carry the traffic in a safe and efficient manner. The higher speed highways, you need a little bit more separation, you need a little bit more care and signalization, a little bit more engineering. But really, if you talk to a transportation engineer, he would say the highway provides access from your property to a global transportation network, where a lot of us look at it as, well, the highway system or the street in front of my house provides access to my property. So there's 2 different ways of looking at it, and a lot of times the way we look at it and the way the DOT looks at it, or County Department of Transportation, sometimes they don't merge if we're not careful. So functional classification system is broken down into the number of vehicles that the highway is designed to carry. So it's all about the volume of the highway. And the state has codes for the highway system that are based on volume. It can be compromised as development occurs, and if development is approved without careful planning, sometimes it can create havoc. So sometimes we wonder how we got here from there, and it's these individual decisions that maybe we're not looking at the big picture, we're just approving a site plan that we don't understand or we don't anticipate something that's gonna spin off from it. So basically define local streets. Function of a local street is basically to provide access to abutting property. It's characterized by inter-neighborhood traffic. You think of it in your street in front of your home. You want it to be pedestrian friendly. Moving traffic is a secondary function. It's more for you to get from your home to a collector road or to a higher level of the street to get to your work or your shopping mall. Local roads normally should not carry through traffic. I know some communities have to put through traffic because they have issues where they need to reroute traffic through a neighborhood, maybe temporary, maybe permanent, and maybe what they call a stopgap until they can actually get some corrections made to other highways. Collector road basically collects the traffic from the local streets or your neighborhoods, and it conducts it to the arterial highway system. It provides, connections between neighborhoods, and it really is the highway, the type of highway you want to improve pedestrian links, pedestrian connections, and have well-planned pedestrian crossings, because it is a higher speed highway. It does carry higher volumes. The pedestrianization is compatible with it, and it actually provides that interconnection throughout the community that you want. So access to adjacent land is a secondary function in that case. Arterial highway is a higher volume highway. Its primary function is to move traffic. It moves higher volumes of traffic at higher speeds. It provides intercommunity traffic between towns and villages and cities. Pedestrian lanes should be separate to a degree. They can be in the margin. I know Oneida County's got Canalway Trail system in an arterial highway, and it works very well because of the spacing and the amount of margin that they have and some of the design elements they put along the trail system. Access to adjacent land on arterial should be minimized. You don't want driveways spaced 100 feet apart. Then there's the limited access freeway, which is I-81. Limited access meaning they're not going to give you an off-ramp with access to adjoining land unless you have a really good reason for it, and 90% of the time DOT won't give you an access ramp. So this functional classification system, this is a map of the greater Watertown area, and this is the functional classification map for Watertown. You can see here's I-81, and then you can see the arterial system, which these are the minor arterials here, Coffee Street, and then the principal arterials are fed in here, and then you get down into the blue, you're into the more of the local collector streets. So that's how DOT characterizes this functional classification system. They have a mapping system statewide that's available online. So, when you're planning, when you're making a decision, when you're doing a site plan, when you're doing a subdivision, it's important to keep the whole context within the region in mind. I don't like to use too many local examples. I like to keep them out of town, but just examples that are applicable anywhere. This is in Howard, Maryland, I believe. You can see how the highway system is broken down here. These are the major I-81 type highways, and then you have the larger collector roads that bring the traffic through, and then you get down to the local level, you see smaller loop roads that are interconnected. These are more neighborhood streets. So, when you're looking at pedestrianization, pedestrian safety, bicycle trails, multimodal transportation, you want to look at the whole system as a whole, and keep that in consideration when you're approving site plans, when you're approving subdivisions. If a new mall comes into town, and that gives you the big picture. And really, in your comprehensive planning, that's what you're trying to do. Is you're trying to take that big picture and break it down into smaller pieces. So one thing I'll always say, and I'll get back to this later, is always encourage cross-access, reverse access, and shared access, and I'll get back to that in a minute. But that's really important, particularly on your collector roads, your arterials, your commercial corridors. What this does is it eliminates the number of driveways and the number of turning movements in the corridor. By using this method, you can really decrease what they call turning friction or side friction, where you have your fender benders and your distractions from people pulling out and pulling in off of sidelines. So who are the involved agencies? If you're on a planning board or ZBA and you're doing a site plan, you want to coordinate with DOT if the state highway's involved, county department of transportation if it's county highways, county planning board or the planning department through 239 review, general municipal law 239, where they review anything within 500 feet of a state highway or county highway or public park or public property. And the rubber really hits the road is that the town, village, and the city planning board, because they're reviewing individual projects. And they have to keep the big picture in mind. So, second topic is more planning trends. What are some of the planning trends that over the past 10 or so years have really come to the top? I know that trail planning has become huge in communities. New York State Canal System, back in 1993 or 4, I believe it was, I was one of 3 people from Oswego County that actually joined the Canalway Trail Track. At one point, we switched governors. One governor didn't seem too interested. The past governor did, and then all of a sudden the new governor got interested because he realized what kind of potential there was and how well the plan was actually drafted. So, some of the planning trends today are linking transportation with land use. You want to look at your land use map and make sure that your land use plan is appropriate to the hierarchy of the highway system. You don't want to put a subdivision in the middle of a major arterial unless you're really careful about how you want it to connect and how you want to create through traffic. Highway corridor management. Corridor management's important. I'll show you a little bit later that actually helps the economy if you have a managed corridor where you're controlling things like signs and driveways and providing pedestrianization and safe crossings in the proper locations. Highway access management, how people enter and exit the highway, the geometry of how the streets interact with the highway. Multimodal transportation. I mean, people now are looking at transportation plans in an integrated way that includes bicycle and pedestrian connections and bus stops. And energy conservation is another big one. They're trying to get people out of their cars, on their bicycles, on their feet, trying to make people exercise more, drive less, and conserve more energy. So these are just a couple of examples of some of what some of the other communities are doing to try to reduce or maintain some of this, oh my God, there's a bus coming at me and I just stepped out the street, I just want to go to the store. This is a community in Ohio, I think this might be in Columbus. I've been to one in Bainbridge, Ohio. And this was one of the conceptual plans. This has actually been built. And I was to one similar to this in Ohio and a couple in Pennsylvania. And they really work well. They look like little villages. And sometimes they're new community style, where they actually built it from the ground up. And sometimes, in this case, this was a downtown that has been retrofitted, make it more pedestrian friendly, make it more like a park, calming the traffic down, using different textures in the pavement, dressing up the facades. Actually, this could be public square right there. It's pretty similar in a lot of ways, and their approach was pretty similar to what I think a lot of people in Watertown are thinking. This is just another example. These are restaurants, and I think there's a theater in one of these buildings. But this is the planning trend with this, the sidewalks with some space to breathe and some design ideas that allow people to cross the street without feeling like there's this perception that it's dangerous. So a lot of these have been successful. They've been tried in the area. A couple have been tried. One has been tried in Camillus, New York. A little bit out of downtown, so I'm not sure that it's totally successful. But this new town center concept has really grown. I know in Pennsylvania they've done a few really nice ones. So some of the other trends are even DOT, their job is really safe and efficient flow of traffic. This is an example on Erie Boulevard where this was an old nightclub, I believe, that has been, part of it has been demolished and there's an existing building here. Back in the day, there was probably 2 driveways here, and I think 2 driveways here. And across the street, this is a newer development where they require them to keep their driveways away from the intersection. And compared to the building across the street, I think this might be a Denny's or something, their driveway is right at the stop line. They have 2 driveways, 1, 2, 3, 4 driveways, and I believe this is another restaurant with a driveway here, and then there's a strip plaza with 2 more driveways here. So they're trying to get away from this and move more towards this to protect those intersections. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But in this example, this is a community that's trying to sort of calm down the strip corridor, and they've developed some basic design standards, some guidelines, some setback, and you can see the older properties are here, but the newer ones as they're moving in are trying to create some vegetative buffers, make the street look a little bit calmer. If the street looks a little bit calmer, people are going to drive calmer. If the street is designed to go 65 miles an hour, they're probably going to go at least 50. So, some of these ideas of calming the visual cues when you're driving, they're really starting to become successful. I know there's a couple of communities in central New York where they have started to do this, and you can almost tell it takes 10 years or so, but you can tell that things are starting to look a little bit better when you drive into town, and it isn't the big mishmash that it used to be. So it takes a long time. We're thinking ahead generations to try to recover from some of the things we've done for what I call vehicle-centric communities. It's just, sometimes it gets to a point where we realize we've got to do something. And just a few amendments or adjustments to their site plan review process, some policies, really at the time it starts to work. So, this town center theory now that has become popular, we start planning for like a movie theater or out parcel development, when a new apartment complex comes in, a hotel facility, regional attractions. These could be in a town center, or this could be an individual proposal that comes in for site plan review. And one of the things you got to think about when you're doing the site plans, you can't just focus on that site plan. You have to think about what are the impacts off-site. I don't want to get into a generic environmental impact statement, but a lot of times a proposal will come in. Back in the 90s, I came in about halfway through it, but I was involved in the Oneida Nation Casino. Nobody believed that a 40-story building would be built where it is, and nobody really understood what was going to happen around it. They didn't really have any zoning to deal with it. They didn't have a comprehensive plan. They weren't sure what to expect. So when you're doing site plans, particularly on commercial corridors, you got to think about this, what I call spin-off development. You get an office park that's been approved, and you've gone through the process of doing an environmental impact statement, and you know that, geez, we want a shovel-ready site because this has been cleared environmentally for an office park. And you have one office comes in and you approve it. Second office comes in, you approve it. Third comes in, you approve it, and it all meets the criteria you want. But the next thing you know, a fast track or a large gas station moves in, or now you've got convenience stores or Dunkin' Donuts, and they're all coming in for site plan approval in an office park that, you considered mansion areas and trees and, some green space and tree-lined streets. So you gotta think about the unplanned growth that might happen as a secondary impact. And one of the ways to really deal with this is comprehensive planning, because what you're really talking about is what is the vision of the community. And when you're reviewing a site plan, you want to keep in mind, what is the vision? Some communities want it to be a strip development. I've had people in comprehensive plan meetings say, well, what's wrong with strip development? It's commercial development. Well, I'll show you a little bit in a minute. DOT actually provided a couple of slides. They did a study some years ago that actually shows that unplanned corridors actually can create a situation where businesses will move. They may not do as well financially. A lot of retailers will say, I want to get as many cars into my lot as I can, so I want as many driveways as I can. And really, that's not always the approach. It's the approach to a point, but once you pass that peak, businesses start to lose money. Things that can spin off are, like I said, fast food. I never thought that 20 years ago I would see a Dunkin' Donuts on Route 57 in Liverpool with a driveway that's 300 feet long and still have cars backing out into the street. I don't know what it is with Dunkin' Donuts. They're very successful, but man, they generate a lot of traffic. And it's a small building. It's maybe a 3,000 square foot footprint. I never anticipated that 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Convenience stores, support services for whatever it is, if it's a hotel or if it's an apartment complex. Apartments are huge now. A lot of people are building apartments all over the place. So that spin-off, people want coffee shops, they want convenience stores, they want shopping stores, they want places that people shop right near their apartment. The other thing I'll talk a little bit more about is this whole concept of gas stations. That we used to think of a gas station as a gas station. Now it's what they call dive-through. It's got 30 units for pulling up and filling your car. A lot of communities have old zoning, and then all of a sudden they have something like a A+ come in with 20 pumps. They didn't anticipate. So to kind of move on into the rural area a little bit, this really does have an impact on agriculture. What happens is, you start out with a nice country road, and then over time, in the 60s and 70s, these are some older buildings. Now all of a sudden, these buildings were designed for your horse and carriage back in the day, and they've survived for the last 100 years. And now there's more and more cars, so we need more and more pavement, and we have 100% road cut all the way up to this intersection. And there's only one building really that should be allowed to have 100% road cut, and that's a firehouse. Maybe a police department. But there's really no reason for any commercial building to have 100% road cut. It's just over time we want more and more driveway. So rather than have a defined driveway, we pave the whole edge of the road. So really, ultimately, this is actually not that far from here. This is all road cut. So people can pull out the top. This is a fairly high volume highway where people can pull in and out wherever they want. When you're driving down this highway at 45 or 50 miles an hour, you have no idea where somebody's going to come from. I mean, hopefully you can see them if this is in your way, but there's no defined place for you to expect people to pull onto the highway and pull off of the highway. So, unplanned growth, that pops up. Anyway, that's just an example of how highway, I think this is in west of Philadelphia. What's the name of the town? Can't remember the name of the town. It's highway west of Philadelphia. This is ultimately how it will grow if it's not managed. And I can't get back to the other slide for some reason. It's not letting me do it. Lost it. So, here's another example. You've got cars pulling all over the curb to park along this building. It's an older building, it's probably been retrofitted to a bookstore. There might be a convenience store on the corner here, but, people are backing into an intersection here. And, a lot of these things have happened over the past and we didn't realize it, but, now it's kind of the time to start addressing issues like this, especially in rural communities where, they've never had a problem before, but now people have 2 and 3 cars, whereas before maybe they had 1. I talked a little bit about how traffic can affect the economy. This is a study that was done by DOT. I believe it was in Manlius, New York. It was done about 15 years ago. And one of the things they looked at was the fact that if people are parked in front of your driveway, they're not likely to make a turn into your driveway, especially if they know they have to make a turn left to get out and wait for people who are waiting for a light to get out. This is what they're showing here. I don't want to get too much into the numbers, but this is 200 vehicles per hour, and they show that if there's a 15-second red phase, that there's if you're right on the corner, your driveway can be blocked 15% of the time. If your driveway is 25 feet from the corner and it's a 200 vehicle per hour highway, it can be blocked 20% of the time. So the further away your driveway is from the intersection, the less your driveway is going to be blocked. And you can see that the closer you get, if the red phase is 45 seconds, which it normally isn't, it's usually more like 25 or so. If your driveway is 25 feet away, it can be blocked 40% of the time. And if the driveway is blocked, the chances are, I know I've done it before, I'll stop and I'll wait for a few seconds and I'll say, forget it, go to another gas station or something. So these are some of the things that DOT found in their study, and they've been trying to encourage, like 100 foot from an intersection on a collector road. They really have come around in the last 10, 15 years, and DOT is really good to work with if you can work with them, get them in the game early. This was a study that was done in Iowa, and it basically shows that your sales index on quarters that are managed versus quarters that are just existing and are not managed. The sales index for the business actually increases when the quarter is managed. So this may be, this was an existing corridor that they came in and developed some management tools, things like driveway spacing and shared access, and they actually found an increase in the sales index. And I don't want to get too much into the economics because, quite frankly, I don't really understand it all. I just know that the study is pretty detailed, and DOT could probably make it available if you wanted it. The other thing we noticed, and this is actually these are a couple of DOT slides. I think this might be Canandaigua. You get these older shopping centers or strip malls, and what happens is the highway becomes either perceived as unsafe, so people don't want to come here anymore, or there's so much capacity that the driveway's blocked so many times and there's not enough access. Maybe there's 2 access points and they're not in the right place. People stop coming after a while. Their volume starts going down, their income starts going down, and if they're a lucrative business, they're going to pick up and move somewhere else where it's perceived as safer. So this is pretty much a tourist complex. If you drive down Route 20, I'm not sure if it's this one or this one, but you look over there, it's been sitting there for years. Once in a while, a Halloween shop will move in for a year or 2, and then they'll move out. But it really, it was built, in its day, it was a hot shopping plaza, but now it's just empty and mostly laying vacant. The other thing is zoning. How does zoning relate to corridor management, and how does it affect your corridor, and how can your comprehensive plan be dovetailed with your zoning, which should be in accordance with a comprehensive plan? This is a zoning map for community in Maine, I believe. If you notice, their commercial corridors are zoned commercial. This is a rural commercial, I'm not sure what that is, I guess that's a diner or something, and this is their basically their strip commercial. The zoning map looks like this, then you're really promoting commercial strip development. You really should try to get this pulled in. We used to call this spaghetti zoning. And one town that actually managed to pull this in and create a planned unit development next to, it was actually a city. Right next to the city, we created a planned unit development, and that planned unit development took off. They had BOCES actually decided to locate their building. They had a couple of businesses expand. It really did take off. And it was very painful to get people who were in this commercial strip to say, I don't want to be in the commercial strip anymore. My land's going to be more valuable if it's in the commercial strip. So it was a battle, but I think in the end, the majority of people, which were probably 90% of the people, said, yeah, we don't want this going into our farmland and destroying our farms. This is a good idea. Plus, we explained to them that when you increase your water and sewer lines like this, it costs a lot of money to maintain it. And it costs a lot of money to the landowners who have to pay in the district. So by having your water and sewer infrastructure concentrated near the city, this is how much you're going to pay for operation and maintenance of your infrastructure over the next 50 years. So, we went through a process of explaining this and going through public meetings and hearing everybody's opinion. And, basically, if your zoning looks like that, that's what your commercial corridor is going to look like without the proper planning. I actually thought this was Route 509, but this is also in Maine. This is that commercial strip on the map.
Would you have any idea how long it took for that thought process to occur before decisions got made?
The example I just gave you about
Yes.
PDD, we really fast-tracked it. I'll tell you, the approach we took was very unique. We gave them a proposal to do a corridor study as a lead into a comprehensive plan.
And this was to who, the town or the municipality?
This was the municipality. It was a township, a fairly rural township. It took us about 2 years to get through the comprehensive plan. We sent out a survey, a fairly large survey, much larger than I wanted to send out, but the zoning commission was actually in charge of the comprehensive plan. I think it ended up being something like 50 questions. And we couldn't believe the response we got. And it turned out that the majority of people didn't want this. And there were a couple of people at the meeting that said, the other side of town is successful because of this. And there were a couple of 3, 4, 5 people that were very outspoken. And after a while, everybody just said, nah, you're wrong. That's not the way we should be going. This goes back to that example I showed you before about how town can make some really good decisions and then there's a change in leadership and they make one bad decision and it can really have an impact on the safety of the corridor and the pedestrianization of it. One thing great about a comprehensive plan and zoning policy and everything is it transcends administrations. So administrations come and go, planning board members come and go, zoning board members come and go, but if you get the right document for your community, it moves on forever. You should revisit it every 5 or 10 years to adjust it, to make adjustments where things don't work. This is actually a community that's air photo was taken probably back in the 1970s, I think. And if you look, this is a fairly heavy residential area at the time. These are all apartment buildings. There's probably 3,000 apartments in this area that have historically been there. It was always an apartment area, and this was at one point the major east-west route in this neighborhood. This is actually Route 690 came through here, and that was built to bypass this. There's a set of railroad tracks that come through here, and I think there was maybe a Niagara Mohawk service area and a small garage there. I think it was a service garage maybe from Niagara Mohawk. So there's a little shopping plaza here that was similar to what you would think of in the 60s and 70s. It was a small grocery store, maybe an IGA or something like that, with a pharmacy. I think there may be a liquor store, you know, your typical. And, you know, people from here used to walk there. This is a pretty prosperous little shopping center. I think that might be an old Grossman's or something. What I thought, 1980s maybe? Lo and behold, and I actually lived in this neighborhood at the time, not too far from here anyway, Home Depot came in with a proposal to build a new store here. I went to a couple of public meetings and everybody was very outspoken about all the traffic in this intersection, that you're going to make this intersection a nightmare. It's going to get too busy. We're not going to be, you know, we're an older population. We're not going to be able to cross the street to get to this plaza. And so DOT and the town, supervisor at the time, spent a lot of time working with Home Depot to get this driveway, I believe it's about 200 or 250 feet away from the intersection, and to install this driveway so it's a right in and a right out. So, and basically it was pretty successful. Everybody was fairly happy with it. Yeah, it's a big box building. It's not really a neighborhood type building, but as far as the traffic was concerned, it was successful. And they knew at the time they were going to be adding this to this plaza. And people said, well, geez, Home Depot is not generating as much problem as we thought it would. Then, you know, they basically went along with the rest of the plaza, and they figured it wouldn't be a problem. At some point, this is actually an older picture, but this is an Aldi's right here. I think it may have been before that, it might have been the first one. Aldi's came in and actually agreed to follow suit and said, we're going to align our driveway over here with the driveway that DOT approved 250 feet away from the intersection. We'll bring them in here, we'll have a through route, and we'll allow people to, come in and out through this this driveway that has a long throat, the road's off the highway. So it was fairly successful, and this business was still doing pretty well. But what happened was, administrations changed. This was working okay, and this was working okay, but now we have a major gas station coming here with probably 25 pumps, 24 pumps.
Yeah.
And they allowed a driveway right here, right next to the railroad tracks. So, now before all this was built, this started to create a bottleneck here. People started backing up. This is a steep hill. Vehicles started backing up. Pretty much business declined in this plaza because nobody really could get in and out of here unless they were making a right-hand turn from this direction. And at that point, there wasn't really much of a residential connection except for these apartments here. So this business started to decline. And then eventually, this new town center came in, and now it's basically, if you are on this highway trying to get on 690 in the morning, the traffic backs all the way up the hill. This photo must have been taken on Christmas Day. I'm not sure why. There's no cars there, but this intersection, particularly this route right here, is pretty busy. And there's no way that people want to dart across the street here. They did allow this building, it's a doctor's office, it doesn't generate that many trips. It has one driveway also. They tried to get shared access, but they couldn't do it because of topography. But you know, this is an example of this one project led to this, led to this, led to this, and then finally led to this, and then this. And I can't remember what that is, but that's a high trip generator. I think might be a church. So, you know, on Sundays it will generate a lot of traffic. That's not really a big contributor, but this is. Now they tried to mitigate it. They did a pretty decent job of getting a lot of the traffic all off the highway. This developer wanted another on and off ramp to 690, and DOT said, no way. They basically shot it down. They said, they're not giving you an off ramp. It's it's a without access highway, we're not giving you access. They made them build this road through to another here. So in order to get back on the highway, you have to drive through this whole thing and then get out to the next collector road and get on, back on 690. So I just wish I had a picture with all the cars in it. You can see there's a fairly good number of cars in here. This has actually become more popular. This is actually growing. So this is generating a lot more trips now. This is a Costco, I think. And that's generating a lot of trips. So, you know, this whole thing at rush hour is pretty crazy. People are trying to
I think there's like 6 or 7 restaurants back on this side of that Costco's, and a
Yeah.
movie theater, and just, it's horrendous down there.
And they're still building more, I understand. I just talked to an architect that we worked with the other day, and he said he's got 3 more projects in here.
Yeah.
This thing, which used to be a single lane coming off 690, is now like 4 lanes with 2 turning left, 1 going straight, 1 going right. This is eventually, this is part of the width of 690 right here. And it's just an off-ramp.
Yep.
So, you know, I just kind of want to recap on some of the commercial impacts. This is from a book called Dealing with Change in the River Valley. It's probably about 20 years old now, but I like it because the photographs and the illustrations are pretty relevant. If you look at a commercial road, what happens with a commercial strip? Here's a rural collector road or arterial. Driving along this road, you have a few distractions, a few stops. There aren't a lot of cars stopping and turning. People aren't changing lanes as much. You know, the traffic is flowing at the speed and volume that the highway was designed to carry. No need for traffic lights, no need for turn lanes. The next photograph, this is what typical commercial strip development, how it would happen. I would actually argue that it would be on both sides of the road, but for some reason he's showing it on one side. You can see the number of driveways, tight spacing. They did manage to get some of the businesses or residences off of here. But you can imagine people pulling in and out of here on a highway that's designed to go 55 miles an hour. So, you know, what happens is you've got all these driveways, all these signs, you know, the aesthetic of the highway, it's not a common anymore. You get all these distractions, people are pulling out, they're stopping, they're turning, they're looking for something. You know, they're changing lanes a lot. So basically what's going on is you're disrupting the flow, and eventually DOT's gonna end up putting, you know, $500,000 worth of lights here, $1 million worth of traffic lights there, street signs, directional signs, not to mention the retail signs that are gonna go up. Well, I like this reduction in quality of life occurs one step at a time. And a lot of it really falls to the planning board, because when they're doing the site plan, to be able to anticipate this is really helpful. So, you know, what would that strip look like? I just bring it back to the photograph. So, you know, what Manuel Arendt suggests is, you know, okay, development's going to occur. You want to stop development. You want to, in a sense, help it. But it's not that it occurs, it's the way in which it occurs. So what he recommends is, you know, you concentrate your commercial development on single driveways, you interconnect it. You have a mix of housing in here. So, you know, that planned unit development, which is a whole other lecture, it's really a good tool to use. If you're going to use planned development district or planned unit development, you really should understand how it works. It's not just a change in zoning that says you can increase your density or whatever. It's a whole process you should go through before you approve one. But basically, by doing this, he's maintaining the aesthetics. There's not as many distractions. There's probably eventually going to be one traffic light here. There's not as much stopping. You know, by the time somebody turns here, you're well past them. It's not all that disruption, distraction, and busyness that distracts motorists. And then just to talk a little bit about residential, and particularly rural areas. You know, here's an agricultural field. And there's, you know, probably something like a Route 20 or Route 12 running through the farmland and forest. minimizing local traffic, volume is low, there's not a lot of human impact on the site, so there's probably not a lot of vehicles. What happens is you start to develop the site for typical residential development. We put a straight road through here, we line up the lots, we have 100-foot spacing with the driveways, and now, next thing you know, there's not this nice, easy, gradual street. People are racing down the street, the typical suburban street that now has become a de facto collector, just because of the shape and geometry of it. So, now you're giving a suburban feel in a rural area. The impact of farmland, you can't, there's no tillable acreage there anymore. And by the way, when you lose farmland like this, it's gone forever, it'll never come back. So, really, you've disrupted the function of this highway system, and you're consuming open space. Rena Lawrence recommendation is this, and when I first looked at this, I said, there's no way that there's that many houses on this slide, that there's not the same number of houses. And I looked at it and said, he's one short, but I forgot the original farmhouse. It actually has the same number of residences in this slide as he does on this slide. So what he's done here is he's created a neighborhood of through roads where the residences are no longer lined up along the street. There's more of a local road or a neighborhood road that these homes are attached to. It maintains the highway function. Sure, you're going to have some traffic coming off of here. And you got to realize that a residential unit generates about 10 trips per day. And I would argue today when we have 2 and 3 cars with maybe 2 parents and 2 kids with a car, I think maybe those numbers need to be revisited at some point. But, basically, by taking this open space approach, you can maintain the rural character of the area. You're minimizing, there's still some tillable acreage in here. You're not eliminating farmland, even if it lays fallow, it's still available as farmland. You're maintaining some setbacks for the highway. The function of the highway is still there. You can probably cruise 45 or 50 miles an hour on this without slamming into somebody. And it limits the impacts to your services. Your water and sewers can be concentrated in this area. Or if it's a community system, your operation and maintenance could be much less to serve a neighborhood than it is to serve something like this where your water lines and sewer lines are going to have to run this entire length. So I said before, always encourage cross-access, reverse access, and shared access, and there's some examples of that. This actually comes from Jefferson County Planning. This is a good example of how to calm traffic on an intersection, maybe on a collector road. If you notice in this is more the typical layout you'd have. You've got in and out driveways, in and out driveways for each parcel. This is an in and out driveway on this side, but now you're really close to this intersection, and you've got all these turning movements and traffic pulling out, crossing multiple lanes of traffic. Maybe a suicide lane, what I like to call them, or the middle with the arrows going each way. But yeah, over here, you've taken these 3 parcels or 2 parcels, and you've concentrated access so that it's not on the collector road now, it's on what they call minor collector. Go ahead.
Brian, one compliment I can give to both of those is that at least the parking is in the back.
Right.
It might not sound like a big deal, but in terms of a placemaking
Yeah.
value, the sense of place is so much better when it's in the back, out of sight, because parking, surface parking is just anathema to placemaking.
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing is, it really, when the buildings are in proximity to the street, especially on an intersection, it calms traffic. People aren't as distracted. When drivers are driving down a highway with signs, cars, trucks pulling in and pulling out, the driver's no longer worried about bicycle and pedestrians. He's worried about the next car that's going to pull out in front of him. And he's got all these signs and lights and directional signs that are distracting him. He's basically holding on to the steering wheel, watching out for the next car. So that's not really a pedestrian environment. It's not an environment you want your kids to go to school in either. Because they're going to try to cross the street. This guy's going to be looking at this driveway right here instead of looking at whoever's crossing the street. And that's how you get your fender benders. This is another example of, this is that strip example I showed in a residential area. Although this geometry I wouldn't agree with, I want a 90-degree angle there. It takes the local traffic off of the collector road and brings it into this neighborhood. And this is a walkable street right here where people can go back and forth between the houses and you don't have to worry about someone coming through here at 40 miles an hour, or even 30 miles an hour. So, you want to maintain highway function when you're planning a subdivision like this, promote shared access where, businesses and neighborhoods are sharing access. I'll show you an example of that in a little while, in a PUD, where you can see the hierarchy of the road, and it's a very walkable community. Avoid the poor geometry. This to me is poor geometry because the road is coming in at an angle. There's a lot of obtuse angles around, particularly in central New York. And it's hard when you pull up to an intersection, you have to look behind you or in front of you. It's kind of difficult. You want to make sure that those angles are straightened out over time. So what are some of the local management tools you can use? Look at your zoning and start rezoning some areas for density. If you've got a large commercial development and it's starting to sprawl out, rezone some land next to it and provide some cross access so it doesn't billow out in that spaghetti zone. It's more concentrated in the area your infrastructure is. On higher speed highways, look at larger lot sizes and frontage requirements. Don't have so many flag lots or 50-foot frontage requirements. I had one town that had a collector road in a commercial office park, and they just automatically put a 50 or 60-foot offset between driveways, and it was just based on the residential zoning. And when I asked why they don't have 100-foot or 150-foot spacing on a collector road, they said, well, residential lots, your driveways are usually 100 feet apart. And I was like, well, this isn't a residential area. This is a commercial office park. We're connected to an arterial where people are traveling through here at fairly great speed. So they didn't kind of anticipate, they went with this Euclidean zoning idea of what driveway spacing should be, and they didn't merge it with their vision for this office park. So, think about driveway spacing, location, and design. I worked in one town where if you were on a collector road, you had to be 150 feet from the intersection before they'd let you put a driveway. And it wasn't DOT enforcing it, it was the town. Shared driveways and cross access. In subdivisions, you have somebody coming in with a cluster and they have 3 homes and they want to provide a private drive with a shared access, that should be encouraged. As long as the town doesn't end up inheriting something that is not the town highway standards. We just want to make sure it's private drives can remain private. Reverse access. If there's a street behind you, I could go to, let me use the example of Camillus. If anybody knows where Camillus is, there's Genesee Street runs, it's the arterial that runs east-west. Well, right behind the commercial area is basically what's become a marginal access road. They really could make better use of it to get a lot of that volume off of that arterial for the local traffic and get it on that marginal access road that goes behind the buildings and access those buildings behind. They've started to do that. And some of those businesses are benefiting from it because I think where it was the phase, it used to be a phase, nobody wants to turn in and out of there anymore. It's just too crazy. Everybody goes around to the light and goes around. Intersection spacing standards. You can write that into your highway code or your zoning. Easements for future roads when you're doing a subdivision or a commercial site plan, require easements or cross-access easements. So in the future, if somebody comes along and builds behind you, they can. Or if somebody builds next to you, they can share your driveway. Try to restrict commercial strip zoning. Try to discourage it. If somebody comes in with a proposal, say, would it be better to do this? Would it be better to do something different than the standard commercial strip? Try to restrict flag lots. If you know what a flag lot is, it's a back lot that has a 50-foot road frontage, and there might be another back lot next to it, and then you've got 4 driveways within 200 feet. And try to restrict that, at least on the major collector roads. And then local road improvements. When you improve your road, make them pedestrian friendly. You know, provide some pedestrian bump outs so people aren't crossing 30 feet of pavement, they're crossing 24 feet of pavement. So this is an example of a PUD, and this is a really walkable neighborhood. It used to be, it was a new community, which means it was a community that was just sort of built in the middle of nowhere. It wasn't next to any city or urban area. It's probably 5 miles from the nearest village. But the way it was laid out, you have a park right here, which is the major collector for the residential community. And this is a state highway right here. And all the entrances to this community are off of the state highway onto these 2 collector roads, which eventually link up, and then link up to another minor collector along the river. All these communities are interconnected with local roads and a local trail system and a local bicycle system. And they're designed so there's green space in between them. And they also have a commercial district over here that they separated with a wetland area that was actually part of the original wetland mitigation for the PUD. They set up the PUD, they looked at all the wetlands in the area, and they said, we're going to do some clustering, but we want some conservation areas to separate some of these uses. This is all interconnected with a trail system and bike system with the commercial areas over here, and the residential areas over here. And in here, they have a little bit of a service core, where I think there might be like a convenience store. I think there might be a veterinarian here. There's a couple of small businesses. There's a clinic here. So that's all on that major entrance to the development. But you can see when a school bus comes through here, they don't have to keep stopping on this collector road. They pull off and they go into the neighborhoods, they pick up the kids, they go to the next one, they go through the neighborhood. So you don't have all that stopping behind a school bus. This is a pretty successful community. It's been successful for probably since the 1960s. It was very well thought out. They were fortunate enough to have a piece of land that was left over from the Department of Defense that they could actually sit down and plan it. So, you know, when you're reviewing projects, improve safety by adopting these minimum safety standards. Here's another example where, you know, this could have been 3 buildings at an intersection, but they had the shared access behind the buildings, they had the parking behind the buildings, so there's not all this confusion. Somebody comes to cross this intersection, they have to cross 3 intersections technically. If it's a busy commercial building, then you've got cars coming in and out here, cars coming in and out here, and then you still have to navigate this. Try to avoid too many road cuts. Try to get the cars off of this collector road, or this arterial. Try to get them into more of a local neighborhood road before they get to all these residential units. You know, avoid the road cuts, the turning movements, the lane changes, the distractions. You know, the other thing is just basic review process. Trying to discourage bad design. And this is an older building with 100% road cut. This is a new building that probably employs 300 people. There's 2 roads in and out of here. This is a collector road. There's another back road out of here. There's never a traffic problem here. This is actually in west of Philadelphia. There's never a traffic problem here. Because everybody knows there's an intersection here. You know, there's traffic calming, there's no commercial development at the entrance. This is pretty successful. I think it's a pharmaceutical, I can't remember which one. But this, you know, this is an older style of development. You know, there's really only one door here. There's no reason to have all the pavement here except they have nowhere to park. And you know, signage. A lot of people kind of shrink when they talk about signage, particularly at a zoning board meeting or a planning board meeting. But this is just concentrating on pedestrians and bicycles. It's just confusing, there's just too much going on. You know, just have some basic design standards. If the sign is 30 feet in the air, people are gonna be looking for their store 30 feet in the air. They're not gonna be looking at the eye level. So this is kind of going the way of the dinosaur. Communities are getting away from this, and they're going more with the monument sign. So people, when everything's at the eye level, it's not up above, people are looking around to try to find a store, or a clothing store, or a restaurant. You know, good design. Basically, this is an older plaza, and there was actually a newer business one here. This whole thing is pavement. It might be, I think they paved the pavement, put curbing in here after they had a couple of accidents. But, you know, this is a very busy bank, but it's well designed. You know, the driveway is quite a ways from the intersection. Traffic flows through the site. These are two totally different approaches to commercial development, particularly at an extremely busy intersection. This was more of a revised planning board. This is the old planning board. And this is just toward the end here, and this is one of my pet peeves. I used to drive through here after work, I don't know, about 15 years ago. And so there's Wendy's going up. And I was like, oh, great, another Wendy's going up. It wasn't really in a super bad location. But when I drove by, I noticed that they paved everything. No landscaping, just pavement. They put concrete curbs in, which are beautiful, but there's absolutely no landscaping on this lot. And when I drove by, I kind of scratched my head and I said, how's anybody gonna know where the driveway is? I said, that has got to be the most confusing approach to a site plan I've ever seen. Well, about 2 weeks later, I drove through there, and the time had just changed. So it was dark at 5 o'clock or so. And some poor lady was sitting right here with 4 flat tires and I don't know, the ball joint on the front of the car broken. The car is literally a wreck. She drove right over this thing, not knowing that it was a sidewalk or a curb. She had no way to tell where the driveway was. If you look at this right here, more people were doing it. Like within the next 3 months, there were 3 or 4 cars shot across here, but they could just pull in there and they were slamming over the curb, so somebody told them to put a hedge up there to make it look like there's a curb. It was one of the worst approaches to a site plan I've ever seen. I can't believe that it was even approved. This is actually right near the regional market near Carousel Mall. When I drove by, I couldn't believe they let them do it. So, you know, as a review, you know, make the best of your review process. When you're reviewing site plans and subdivisions, you know, the planning board should have discussions. They can be heated discussions, that's all right, everybody's got an opinion. But, you know, try to cooperate with the permitting agencies. You know, let the county chime in on 239. Ask DOT if there's something that you don't understand or that you want to understand better. Call them. I mean, I had to call DEC several times during site plan review process. They're always helpful. They always answer your questions. They'll even go to the environmental mapper and look at it for you. They don't want to do it full time, but they'll do it. You know, improve your commercial site plan review law. You know, look at your site plan review process. And, you know, review it, make sure you're addressing some of these things. Same thing with subdivision review. If you've got a highway that's a problem area, try a highway overlay, where you can actually put a floating zone over the highway and implement some of these standards. I wouldn't recommend it as a permanent solution, but it's a stopgap until you can get a corridor study done and get some corridor management in place. And the other thing is, update your zoning code definitions. I can't tell you how many times I've asked somebody, when was the last time you looked at the definitions of your zoning? And they'll look at me and they'll say, and these are fairly large communities too. I'm not talking about, you know, out in Vernon or something. I'm talking about communities that are suburban areas. They'll look at me and they say, we've never had it. And, you know, I'll say to them, you know, back in 1980, this was a gas station. How do you define a gas station? Right now, this is on Route 57 in Liverpool. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, probably 8 or 10 pumps in there. And I've seen these things massive, where there's 20 pumps, 25 pumps. That's not a gas station anymore, it's what they call a dive-through. It generates a lot of traffic, a lot of movement, and a lot of side friction. Plus, we've got convenience store associated with it. So people are also pulling in there to eat, which is how they really make their money. I'm not sure they make their money on the fuel. So, you know, I had one community had a neighborhood service district I worked with. And it was the intent of the neighborhood service district, well, it's a small hamlet. And it's a small gas station with a small convenience store. Well, somebody came in and wanted to build a big, you know, like an A+ or something. And they didn't want it, but they didn't know how to deal with it because they hadn't thought of it and they hadn't changed their definitions in 25, 30 years. So the developer of course, was sitting there pointing in the book, oh, it doesn't say that in the book. And the planning board was like, well, wait a second, that's not the intent of the district. And then the lawyer's like, well, what's the intent of your district? It's the zoning board's job to interpret the zoning code. So what's your intent? And the zoning board was going around, well, we just wanted it to be a neighborhood business. We didn't want it to be a 7 or 8 pump gas station. I hadn't even thought of it until something came up. So, you know, make the best of the review process. Try to encourage quality design, landscaping, screening. Landscaping slows people down. If people are exposed to street trees, they're not going to drive 55. They're going to immediately slow down. Try to look at something like a gateway to your community. It doesn't have to be a flowery banner that says, welcome, this is the greatest place to live. All it has to do is say, Watertown, maybe a couple of light poles with some landscaping, and people are going to say, well, I'm coming into something. Maybe I should slow down. Or it could say Loudville, you know, welcome to Loudville. I've seen some really elaborate gateways. Some of them are kind of tacky. I've seen some really classic ones that are just, you know, a couple of historic street lights with a small sign on them. And the elaborate ones work too, because, I don't know, if they look like a billboard, they probably speed up. Update your comprehensive plan. Don't let it sit there for 30 years. Try to review another section of it every 5 years or so. Make sure if it's still relevant, don't change it. But maybe there's something you need to change. Maybe there's some residential development occurring in a part of town that doesn't make sense because they're not going to get water and sewer for another 50 years. And just remember the community vision. I mean, the comprehensive plan itself is about the community's vision. What do you want the community to be in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years? And you got to, the vision can change over time, but you really want to stick to your vision. And you want your local codes and your local land use policy to try to send you in the direction of that vision. And you know, basically, if you don't plan, you don't know where you're going. I like this. I always like this. My grandfather used to say to me all the time, you don't know where you're going, you're going to end up somewhere else. So, you know, you just let it go. It's going to snowball, it'll get worse, and it'll be another Erie Boulevard. The city of Syracuse has spent a lot of money fixing Erie Boulevard. I was just talking to Andy before the meeting. It's going to cost them a lot of money to bring that to where they want it to be. They did a great job on the zoning ordinance and sort of a guidebook for what the new zoning is going to be. When I looked at the zoning map, they're still showing a red commercial strip out in Erie Boulevard. So rather than pulling the zoning in and saying, well, we're going to put the commercial here, and we're going to have this as a planned development district, and maybe this is going to be a commercial center, and instead of having blobs of commercial, they still have a strip. So they're going to struggle with that, and they're going to do it probably through, you know, access management, driveway spacing, more landscaping. But I think, you know, probably they should have looked a little bit harder at maybe amending their zoning document, their zoning map. So that's just about it. I don't know, am I behind or ahead?
No, you're good, actually. You know, questions?
Sure.
I'm starting to see around, and especially some of these connected roads, I know it's not a new idea, they're putting in these roundabouts.
Yeah.
Where you've got maybe a intersection coming in this way, going traffic, are these things working? I know when I first seen them, you gotta be cautious because everybody doesn't realize that around the roundabout, you got the right of way. But, are they really working or haven't had that much familiarity with them?
My understanding is that the safety level roundabout is like 3 times the common intersection. You might be familiar with a couple of roundabouts in Syracuse, Carrier Circle. Those aren't really roundabouts, I'm not sure.
Well, that's a large scale.
Right.
What I'm referring to was actually where they just built a new casino in Bridgeport, New York. And they had an intersection of 298 coming onto Route 31, which was fairly heavy travel. Now they put a roundabout in there.
Yeah.
And I've seen it
Roundabouts-
around other places where they even did it in residential areas.
Yeah, they've been very successful and they've really decreased the accidents.
But they're not creating accidents.
No, actually, 20 years ago, they were using them in Ohio. Cambridge, Solon, Ohio. They were using them in residential areas, and particularly in planned unit developments. And they just found that the traffic safety improved dramatically, particularly, especially 5-corner intersections and things like that. You know, you can remember some of these roads developed with horse and buggy, so.
I used to drive through one in Massachusetts every day, and there were multiple accidents.
Well, you've got to remember, if you're on the roundabout, that person's got the right of way. You see these people suddenly come right in there, whoa, you know.
Yeah.
I think a lot of just getting used to them, but I know in New England, yes, you can say it around, but I'm just seeing pop up here lately, and I've seen them also traveling this winter in some but residential developments with heavy concentrations. They'll throw a roundabout in there just to kind of slow traffic down, I would imagine, more or less.
They take a while to get used to.
Yeah, that's the whole,
It might sound paradoxical, but roundabouts will actually calm traffic with the same time that they increase throughput. They can move more cars through than a 4-way
oh,
stop.
I agree with that.
And instead of going through like at 30 or 35 when you've got the green light, you have to slow down to 15 to comfortably navigate the roundabout. So it's a simultaneously good traffic calming measure.
Well, one of the things John just said, you've got to get everybody on the same page, so when you're going into these things.
They've been using them in Europe for years, and they seem to be working there.
There's one west of Ithaca going to, I think it's Elmira, and I was going through that at about 12 o'clock at night, didn't know it was there. And it's if it's not any lights there, it's very hard to know that it's there because you can't see anything. And it's the same way in Saratoga County off 87, there's one of those.
That's the one I was
If
on.
you don't know it's there, even in daylight, it's quite hard because there's heavy traffic, it's hard to navigate.
That's one of the things I agree with you. I was on the one you were talking about in Saratoga County, and it just kind of pops up. There's no sense of arrival. Just like I said, the gateway to the city. I mean, you want to slow people down, you got to do something to make it look like something's going to happen. I know I've seen on Long Island, which is, you know, they have strict land use regulations because they don't have a choice. But I've seen a couple of roundabouts go up where they actually put something in the center and light it up at night. So
Well, it's like the Carrier Circle one, used that for years, but there's lighting there, and you can navigate that and see it's quite busy.
yeah, in my opinion, those are just too big a radius and because the radius is so big, the speed is much higher. People go zinging around that one, 50 miles an hour. It's not really, it wasn't really the intent when it was built. It was just that it was over-engineered and it's wide, 3 lanes wide, roundabout, and it's crossing, you know. Somebody really wants to move, they come into the roundabout, they cross in the left-hand lane, and they go halfway around, they cross back out.
Another question, in terms of capital investment, does most of this capital to do the planning and to build the structures come from the developers, or does the state offer some incentive or to construct some of these things when they don't have to do all the signage and all the other things that happens if there isn't any planning?
Well, the state does offer incentives. I have actually worked for a couple of communities where the town engineer was very, he didn't really think like an engineer. He thought more like a, I don't know, visionary, I guess. And he used to say, pay as you go. The developer wants to build a subdivision over here, and he needs to bring a water line from there to here. Town's not gonna pay for it. So the developer's got a bond for the water line. And by the way, the sewage treatment plant's at 50% capacity, and you're a mile and a half away from this wastewater treatment plant, you gotta build a sewer main and a lift station while you're at it. And I've seen developers just sit back and say, we're not gonna do that, we're not gonna do that. I'm like, well, and he would sit down and do his math and say, listen, you're gonna build 30 homes, and you got plans to build another 40 homes, and you're gonna make this much profit per home, and this is gonna cost you, you know, half $500,000 for the lift station, and probably $1 million for lines, $1.5 million out of however much money you're gonna make. And finally, the developers would cave, because they knew that this was the cost of doing business. I've worked with other towns where you're gonna build something on a commercial site, whether it's existing or whether it's a non-conforming lot or a non-conforming use, you're gonna build a sidewalk for us.
So is that in the book you were referring to from Connecticut? Is that outlined in terms of how one would analyze the capital investments for just what you described?
I don't think he doesn't go that far in that book. He alludes to some of it, but he doesn't actually get into the detailed numbers. I know the engineer I used to work for had the numbers in his head. I'm not sure where he got them from, but they seem to work. You know, there are people that specialize in that. You know, that they can come up with the capital investment, the numbers they need, and how they can generate it. Some communities have development impact fees where if you come in with a commercial site, you know, the planning board's going to charge you so much to review the commercial site, and we're going to pay an engineer to review the engineering and a planner to review the planning, and you know, if it costs you $10,000 and you dig your feet in and you dig your heels in and you don't want to go along with us, then it might cost you $50,000 to come to the same conclusion. I think usually the way they write it is it's, you know, like a $5,000 fee to review it, and if the review process takes more time or becomes more confusing, then you have to pay as you go. There was one, another firm I worked at, one of the planners there said, new development should pay its way. The people that live in the community shouldn't have to pay for the new development. If a new developer is going to profit from building 100 units on a 50-acre site, then the developer should pay for the infrastructure to make the improvements. If it requires a traffic light, DOT says you need a traffic light because you've got 50 units at 7 trips per day, then the developer should pay for it, not DOT, not the community, but DOT doesn't have the teeth to do that. Their jurisdiction is only within the right of way. The only jurisdiction is just traffic safety. So they're not gonna tell the town, you know, make the developer do this. The developer's gonna do it, and then when it warrants a traffic light, you know, we're all gonna end up paying for it. But in a couple of the towns I work for, they said, this warrants a traffic light, you're paying for it. Yeah, I think the developer told me, yeah, somebody told me it'd be like $50,000, and I was like, no, it's not gonna be $50,000 to put up a traffic light like the one you have to put up. I said, by the way, DOT's gonna make you put 2 of them up, not just one. So he didn't know that. You know, they're gonna try to get away with what they can. On the other hand, I work with a lot of developers that are very cooperative. I mean, I just did a site plan review for somebody in Oneida County, and I worked with the developer before. I've actually done site pads for him to build his building before. And he's just, you know, whatever it takes, it's worth it to me. you know, so I'm old to just say, I wanna be a good neighbor, I don't want people ticked off at me all the time. If I'm looking at you all like bleary-eyed, because I've been staring at a computer since 5 o'clock this morning, and my eyes are killing me. Any other questions?
Thanks for coming. Our next session will be on September 16th on use variances. That's our tentative topic. So look for the notice for that in a few months. Thanks again for coming.
Thank you.
Well, this is a good topic. And we're dealing with some of those issues right now.
Right.
There's a new roundabout down there, Route 31. Route 31, Sylvan Beach. There's a brand new one.
We have a brand new one right here in the city of Watertown.
Yep, over there.
So,